Hi, friends. Welcome again to Soaring Through Chaos. And as always, we are in the midst of a pandemic, so there are challenges, health challenges, economic challenges, possible loss of jobs, and also the divisiveness that comes along with these things. And that's why I'm doing this series. We talked to a number of people who are doing interesting things in their life, so we can hopefully learn from each other. So with me is Dr. Glory Singh. I got to know her when I was teaching at, and I continue to teach at MICA in Ahmedabad, which is a management school. So Dr. Glory, tell us a little bit about yourself. You were at MICA at the time when I met you. Tell us how you joined MICA and what's your journey like?
So first of all, thank you. Thank you for having me on this wonderful platform, this wonderful series that you have started. And I appreciate your efforts in bringing in people from diverse background. And I'm privileged and grateful from the bottom of my heart to be a part of it. So coming to MICA happened after I completed my PhD, which was on tribal organic farming, the production system. After that, I joined MICA as a senior research associate over there, and I was a part of frameworks and research design, and at times getting into getting an interface with the students, interacting with them. It was really vibrant and a different experience per se. I learned a lot over there, and yeah, and then as I hail from a background which is predominantly development and agribusiness as such, so I took my own plunge from there, and
Yeah,
I
that's
moved.
so at MICA, you are not working with tribals or with organic
Yeah.
farmers.
So that was not really my calling, I would say. That
It's a
was
great
not really my
school. I
calling.
love MICA.
That's a Yeah, I have lots to, lot of reverence to that place. I've learned a lot from there and evolved as a person.
So what is your
Met
calling and how have you been pursuing it since MICA? What has been your calling?
uh, since MICA, then after that I've taken a plunge, like I said, professionally. So your calling, I believe, is predominantly we spend most of our time in professional interface. So might as well do something which is your calling, make it your profession. That's what I believe. And then I joined this international agency where I'm a social scientist, and I also look at their strategic communication for the India operations, all the projects over India that are run. So I look into value chain and supply chain and market linkage of agricultural product revolving specific to only potato, sweet potato and potato, all varieties. Uh, and how do we leverage farmer income, household incomes of these farmers through the endeavor that we do out here. So small start, but yeah, something to look forward to every single day. It's a real struggle to cohesize these small marginal and small farmers in the country, especially in India. It's a really tough job to make a business out of. A lot of people get into philanthropy. I was also a part of it at some point, but I realized you cannot treat people who are really seeking, you know, more than anything, integrity, not money. Money, of course, is a part, but seeking integrity. So if you make them sustainable, if you make them enable them to earn their own living, find respect amidst all of those. It would require some real business to come through
Yeah,
in their
yeah, and
understanding.
especially now, so much has changed during the pandemic. Have you experienced
But
that change in your work because of the
yeah,
corona? In what ways has your work changed? In what ways have the lives of these farmers, these tribals changed because of the pandemic?
so like farming and farmer community as a whole has always been vulnerable. You know, they have to always walk through. Corona is a life-changing experience for us, but every single chaos has been a vulnerable experience for farmers ever since. We are just realizing it now that how important their presence in our lives are, because when everything shut down, you cannot do without food. You have to eat, and we must pay our gratitude and reverence to this particular community. And only now have we woken up to newfound respect for this community. But understanding how difficult it is, my answer to that would be it has always been difficult. You talk to every single individual working in agricultural sector, it uh, is always a work in progress, and a farmer as a community is never out of that zone of vulnerability. They are always vulnerable, and I don't know when will these things shift and change. We are in the pursuit of it. We do. My work revolves around SFLF, which is small farmers large farm, which is like which is a participatory research where we cohesize all the small farmers in order to grow a particular crop, so that the land holding is the main issue, so that every farmer with a very small land holding come together as a group, and then you scale up the business aspect of it. Unless we form group, we cannot look into how do we provide the necessary scientific interventions. It cannot be done individually. It has to be
Mhm.
done on a group level. So scaling up of all that we have technology wise, even training them how to do it properly, the right way, like they say. So we come as an organization there. My work come as in those aspects, but it is far more meaningful to me, more than what I do. And often that becomes a trouble. A
Oh,
trouble because you are so invested in something, and your thoughts, your ideas, you chose this because you are extremely passionate about this, and often you want that thing should change overnight, but
yeah.
it is a radical thought. It is one thing to think that, and another thing to have it visually in front of you happening there. That's a different story. That's not so soon. At least with farmers, change is like even a plant. You look for a small example. When you grow a plant in your house also requires so much love, so much care, and one day with even with all that care and with all that attention that you give to the crop, sometimes you get disappointed.
True.
So it is not predictable at all. The business of it is not predictable.
Yeah, I
But
always tell my friends who are in a hurry, saying, "Oh, we need to have a technology to speed it up." So it still takes 9 months to have a baby. It's not like instant. It still takes, and any baby that comes out before 9 months is called premature. So,
yeah,
so organic processes take their own time. Maybe things will change over time, but we're not even sure if we speed it up, whether it's using all these technologies, right? We have all these, what is it called, the genetic GMO and all that.
Yeah.
We're never sure. What's your opinion on GMO? In what ways has it changed farming? And yeah, is your work
Um,
involved in understanding these things?
Not really, not really. But we do deal with not organic most of the time. We are into less chemical, but not chemical free at all. Not like that. So we deal with mostly technological intervention and um, teaching them the practice of it, like through how the yield is going to get more, how bringing in these kind of theoretical practice into field, you know, like the things that we research in how can we advance this farming community as a whole, we bring those skill sets into practice. So, and we watch it out as pilots. So, how are they responding to each of these? Or even a question like, is it even worth it studying these kind of, is it a fallacy or would it worth a pilot even? So sometimes that's also the question. So GMO and all, we don't, not really, but we have generation crops like generation one, which is generation one, generation two, generation three, these kind of crops, which will enhance the yield. So farmers also are not in a, when we talk of sustainability, organic, this, that, all that is fine, all that is fine, but are our farmers ready to take on those kind of, moving beyond green revolution and thinking about a wholesome kind of nutrition rich, nutritious, and probably sensible kind of plantation? They're not yet ready. It's a good debate, it sounds good, but I don't think it can be plundered so soon by our farmers. They need to be, first of all, economically sound through these things, through growing mass vegetables like the staples,
Mhm.
the food security crops, as we call them, the wheat, the rice, the potatoes, the um, what else? The pulses. So growing these staples have brought them to some sanity, some financial sanity. They're not dying. At least they are able to sustain themselves and their family through growing mass crops. But it will
Yeah.
take them a while to go beyond. Our policies and everything in our country is so much obsessed with green revolution. At some point it worked, but if you look now, there are probably more than 5,000 varieties of vegetables and fruits. But how many do we have? How many do we take in our diet? Uh,
5,000. Wow.
yeah, yeah, which we are not aware of.
Yeah.
So, and potato itself has different varieties, so they come in like all the 7 colors of the rainbow, like we see it. But are people aware
Wow.
of it? No, no. So that knowledge to sink, to let that knowledge, sink in and cram up, would take some time for people also. And then we can talk and debate and everything about farmers and sustainability and organic, all of that. It's a nice, those are nice initiatives, nothing against them, but just that you are not, we as a country, I'm talking specific to India, is not yet ready. Maybe there has to be structural changes, structural changes and policy wise, leadership wise also it has to percolate. Unless you are.
Yeah, I fully agree with you because the closest I got to farming was to understand the farmers in Udaipur. And they educated me that normally when we talk about pulses and even millets, for example, we only think about bajra and a couple of millets.
Yeah.
They said there are like 40 types of millets. And they're all pretty
True.
nutritious, but they never
Nutritious,
took
yeah.
off. They
They
never
are,
took off.
yeah. So we have a in food and agricultural industry, in my profession, we do have something called biofortified crops. I'm sure you have heard of it. So
Yeah.
these biofortified crops are a part of our initiative, which is to imbibe the crop with some more nutrients to combat hidden hunger, which is caused primarily because of uh, a lack of micronutrients in your diet, in our diets. So how do you reconcile with that fact is induce crop scientifically, let's say a potato. So you induce the crop either scientifically, so which is also not genetically modified but modified, it, but modified to some extent, where the crop is induced with let's say vitamin E rich potatoes. So it will not only in Africa we have that, which we call orange fleshed sweet potato. So that we have. So when you induce these kind of crops, nutrients, so these crop help malnutrition and hidden hunger.
So
So
is
that
this done chemically or is it done using hybridization? How do you increase the vitamin E?
hybridization,
Okay.
sometimes naturally, sometimes few crops, like I said, we are not aware of a lot of crops. We are only aware and eat in our diet maybe less than 300 400 varieties of fruits and vegetables, but there are more than 5,000 that we are not aware of.
Yeah.
So amongst those 5,000 there are people who study a lot on these things. So like talk of think local, grow local and all of that, the buzz of the day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the buzzword now is local. So when you say local, you are precisely inkling at something that is indigenous to a particular place.
Yeah.
So which is indigenous to a particular place, meaning you have to look into the food systems that are existing. Let's say, and how do you know that? You know that by having a conversation with the native tribe of a certain territory, of a certain locality. So they would let you know, these people are very wise. They know things without studying. They know things by living with plants and animals. They know things by hit and trial. Like uh, if they get a wound, they might have applied at some point in their life some leaf, the paste of some leaf on their hands, and they realize it heals, and the properties are quite healing as compared to any medicine you would take or apply, to a similar kind of situation. So which is to say, these things, some crops we do scientifically do to create a mass cultivation, so that the farmer is not vulnerable, growing local varieties, which are nutritious, but the yield is not more.
That's true.
So
That's
that's
true.
the yield is the risk. The yield is, like, I believe, is the fatal thing that a farmer goes through.
That's true. And in
Fancy things.
Yeah, and what I noticed in Udaipur was that some have high yield, but it takes much longer to cook. So people won't buy it because of the time to cook.
Right.
Mahwah is another example that I heard of. Mahwah trees are
Mahwah,
there
yeah.
all around India. I don't even think there's an English word for it. I don't know. But
I also don't know.
it's
I'm so sorry.
ubiquitous.
I
I
should
mean,
know.
anywhere you go in India, you're going to see, along with the banyan trees, along with Ashoka trees and people trees, Mahua is always there. And the
Mahwah.
flowers are very nutritious. And literally
Mm.
hundreds of tribes use them as one of their staples. But
Mm.
the reason it never went into the cities is it can take several days to process the flower,
True.
the drying, and then it's very fragile. It doesn't seem to be marketable. It cannot be mass produced. It cannot be mass marketed for a longer.
Yeah.
The shelf
So
life is very short. So do you run into these kinds of issues when you work with local tribals and marketability of
yeah.
certain?
Yeah. It's very difficult to explain them, and frankly, one should not. This is my belief. This is my belief. One should not disrupt the food system that is already existing with them. Like during my work with Ajim Premji Philanthropy, I worked with them for a couple of months. So I realized, my work was pertaining to a particular tribe, Kondha tribe of a certain area in Odisha. So I worked with them and I realized these kids were given rice and egg as a part of their midday meal for the smaller age groups. So they took it as a snack, you know
Yeah,
complimentary. It's a way of, I thought it, I looked at it from that way. Maybe I'm open for any kind of criticism around it, but that's completely my thought and what I've studied also in the literatures. So when I looked at it, they were just coming because you are giving them free, they're eating that. Otherwise,
the
given an
snack.
option, they also they go home and they eat things which is inherent to their food systems, inherent to that climate, inherent to what works for them for survival, for their life to sustain in a climatic zone, and in a particular like in that particular area for them to survive. So
Yeah,
you are disrupting by giving them the wrong kind of approaches, and also disrupting their food habits. They're forgetting their sort of, now for them also it is not fashionable to take millets. Now government is investing in millets, but it was always there. I mean, what are you investing on? It was always there. Why so much? Why are you making such a show out of things that were already there? They were a part of our culture. They
that's
were
so
already.
yeah, it's so interesting you're mentioning that. When I was growing up, my parents both came from Karnataka, although we were in
Okay.
Bombay. In coastal Karnataka, the staple, or anywhere in Karnataka, the staple is
Hmm.
mostly rice, not wheat.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
whenever my mother would make chapati, it was for breakfast or for snacks, never for a full meal. So I never had roti, which is made out of wheat, ever as a main meal. Wheat was always a snack. Bread was a
Yeah.
snack, and so was wheat. Anything, roti, you name it. Whereas you go to the north, and my
Hmm.
wife is from the north, roti is the staple, at least in most parts of northern India, except in Kashmir, where again, rice is the staple. So we
Hmm.
all have our local, as I said, there's a local thing, and then there's the cultural thing also, along with
The,
that.
the fashion, the fast forward lifestyle, which is obviously always led by FMCG, these big corporate houses.
Yeah,
Then them and people like us, people like you and me, wanting a life, not to only blame the FMCGs, but people like us who are running out of time to cook themselves, you know, one pot meal sometimes, even to For that, something that requires lesser time, but always this is what I have studied, that things that take very less time to get cooked also take even less time to get digested. So the energy is released very fast, so it
Yeah,
won't so it is not healthy also from that aspect.
the glycemic
So
index is high, which means that it'll get absorbed very
yeah,
fast. For
very
somebody like
fast,
who's a
yeah,
diabetic, that could be dangerous because sugar level will
true.
shoot up, for example.
Should have. Mm.
Yeah, so
So
interesting. So you've been working on the interface of food and how it digests in the
systems,
body,
yeah.
the marketing side of it,
No,
so many things
not the
around it.
digestion. The digestion is something I am curious. I'm always curious. These things are my interest areas. These I study on my own. We don't work on them. What we work is predominantly food system and and leveraging through biofortification and all those kind of things.
So,
Scientific.
how did that become your passion? Did you have a background in agriculture or family thing, or how did you get into this space?
I actually I did my MBA in agro-business management. I so that decision got made just like that. I don't know why. That point I was not aware why and what, but I was always cute. I had these deep feelings since a very small age, not relative to farmers, but when I'll go with my father, let's say, I used to go for walks. I would see these very people begging, like those kind of. I know it sounds very, which is very cliche, but these are feelings, Like I would look at these farmer, like these beggars, and I would always say my father that I just wish God. I don't know. I have these very deep feelings, very very deep feelings, and I can almost feel the same pain like them, and I might not be able to express that because I'm used to very cold expressions. I might not express it, but I did share that with my father, and he said, if you're feeling that, maybe God has a plan. If you're feeling these things so deeply that you can almost sense it, maybe there is something in life you, that this should be alive inside you. That feeling
Wow.
should be alive inside of you. Never let that go away. A lot of things will come, has come and gone. So I mean, everything, a lot of chaos comes in life as you grow up, as you join somewhere or progress in life. But that feeling has been consistent. I don't know whether this is the place, where my calling ends and this has been the answer to it. No, I wouldn't be able to say that. But yeah, I feel happy that I'm doing something,
And
that
this is interesting.
contributing something.
Yeah, yeah. And again, we're in the midst of so much chaos right now. Um, do you have any idea what's likely to happen with food security in India? How are things coming along? I know at least 2 or 3 months, many farmers could not do farming, right? That's my understanding.
Yeah, yeah,
Then
yeah.
what will happen to food security over the next several months?
You know, food security is also is a very overrated word. There
Yeah.
is enough there is enough food security. We do grow these crops, we we have a sister organization which is called IRI, which is International Rice Research Institute, where the sole purpose of them is to, you know, help farmers of all across world, all across the globe to grow rice and have a sustainable rice storage and for food and food security and all these kind of things. And they directly work with the government. Even we directly work with the government. So all the crops that these farmers grow are taken by government for the sole purpose, So I don't think there is a dearth of food security. Food is already stored. Maybe looking at storage, how the government is storing the food grains. Are there enough? To my knowledge, there are not much warehouses in the country. There's not many investment also in the same area. Warehousing has to be looked into seriously, and also the food processing, value addition to, like I said, the business aspect of it. Why should farmers be always looked at some kind of mercy, as if your virtue and your mercy has to be lended to them? That kind of proposals made for any philanthropy to run. You need some people who would be sitting there and expecting and begging, and you have, and at your mercy. So that idea has to go.
Very interesting. A lot of this is new to me, and I'm excited about learning. Every time I meet somebody in the food industry, or even particularly the agricultural, I realize how little I know. It's easy to throw buzzwords, as you said, sustainability.
Even even
Sorry.
I know very little. Even I know very little. Studying the same also, looking, it's one thing to study. You are more idealistic then. It's one thing to study the literature and doing your research academically. I'm talking about. It's another thing to see what is happening. To be
True.
a spectator, of how things work. It took me a while. To really understand that cussing and praying cannot exclude, they cannot exist at the same time together. At the same, meanwhile, when you are uh, cursing the leadership,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
cannot pray for sort of uh, these very important shifts to take place. So there are already all the crops that we give, that these farmers produce, are going to the government. Anyhow, they do go. There are provisions where a certain amount of so that is food security basically.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
these crops that you store has to have to come to use when there is a crisis.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to open the gates. You have to open the gates when there is a need, a real crisis uh, experienced by the nation. If that is not happening, there is something wrong that is going on out there, and that has to be looked into. Something wrong by that I mean, are the food that you take, are the farmers produce that you take and stored properly?
Yeah.
There are evidence of grains being stored and rotten,
Oh.
not stored properly and rotten, and now you say that we don't have food security. How on
Yeah.
earth? Like, every year there is a certain provision that this much amount of, this metric tons of rice, this metric ton of wheat, this much metric ton of pulses has to go and be stored in your warehouse. So if the evidence say that there are no warehouses, not many warehouses, to store the kind of crop that is going to the government. Clearly, it's telling of itself.
So there's
Is
more
what I
work to be
believe.
done. Yeah.
Of course, in terms of the chain issues, the supply chain issues, along with the warehouse.
So when you're at MICA, which is where we met, you're doing very different things, isn't it?
Yeah, I
What
was
what
doing
kept you
very
busy when you're at MICA? Which I believe there was nothing to do with
students,
organic farming at that
students.
time.
No, I was working on research. I was predominantly a research faculty out there. So I was doing my research. I was engaged in student interface. I was also, and my research involved these things. food
Oh,
security, and yeah, I used to write papers on that. I never lost touch of that. That is reading and thinking on mm, frameworks and design and all of that is also very deeply a part of me. This is fine, but without that, even this you cannot understand.
true,
The practice of it, you can only understand if the practice is properly done or not, only when you have studied it properly.
true,
And
true.
also, this also feeds into that. Then you get, gaps also through working. So they have to come together somewhere.
Yeah, in fact, it's interesting you mentioned that. I had a teacher who really helped me understand this. We are often like separating between theoreticians and practitioners,
Yeah, yeah.
but
There has to be. They feed each other. They
they
feed
feed
each
each
other.
other. And even within the
Yeah.
theoreticians and the practitioners, there are the artists and then there are the scientists. So there are people who are trying out new things all the time. So that's the art
Mm,
part or the experimentation. And there are those who systematize what they've seen and make it more,
true.
make it say mass production or food security or nutritional value.
Mm,
So we need the art, we need the science, and then we need the practices. So theory alone is not enough, but theory on
no.
the novelty is important, like what we are hearing about the new pulses, the new types of what do you call millets, or as you said, they're not new really. They've been around for thousands
They've
of
been
years.
around. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know what to say. They have been
Yeah.
around. They have been around. It's there. It's quite there. You just
But
have
they've never
to.
been marketed. They've never been mass produced. They've never been looked at
No,
seriously in
no.
terms
They
of.
have not. Never been. And now also the models of agriculture that already exist, that we practice as a, not just us, everybody around the globe, is not sustainable. Is not sustainable in terms of climate, in terms of the soil, which is the basic, in terms of the nutrition aspect of it, and in terms of food security also.
Hmm.
Because see, now if the shop closes due to corona and everything, we almost shut down on our expectations from one day to another of what to expect of fetching our groceries, fetching, you know, things that are very essential. So food is one of them, because you don't have a sustainable model where we don't have kitchen gardens, where we don't have, we are never encouraged to have a thought around those kind of thinking, where you grow little, but everything, so that if something goes off, you can still survive with your own kitchen garden, with your own crops, small little plants that you grow. You can still survive with that much
So there are
from one
people
day
who
to
are
another.
saying, especially when the pandemic kind of grew, that
Mhm.
it is essential for people now to think in terms of group, all of us having that small amount of farming, whether it's kitchen garden or terrace garden,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
is it, would you agree?
Anything.
And is it realistic? Like
Yeah.
see people living
Participate.
in the cities, people who live in big cities like metro cities like Delhi or Bombay, they don't have
Mm-hmm.
even space for gardening, right? So what can they do? Is it even realistic to think in terms of farming in the big cities?
With all the technological advances and everything, it's not difficult also, because you can take a community center. It has to be done consciously. You first have to be ready to accept when reality is hitting you on your face. You have to first accept it to move forth. And
Mm.
the way to move forth is to going to the place where it needs to be fixed and healed.
Yeah,
So that place is all of us. All of us, unless all of us think that this is essential. We do think that having a park, having a gym, these are essential, these are fancy, these are essential. So we have them. The moment we feel that, okay, instead of a park with just grass, eternity of grass and greenery, except for oxygen, they don't provide you with, and maybe some floral flowers. They they are just not giving you anything much utility wise. So in those areas, we can think of there can be change, there can be vegetation, to there is hydroponic, there is aeroponic, there are technologies which don't require you to um, only soil, which don't require soil even for that matter.
that's true.
You can
That's true.
utilize a proper small space to grow your own plant and high yielding plant on that.
Yeah,
So yeah.
you remind me of what happened in my home 10 years ago. We were in California and we still have that house, but haven't been there in a
Mhm.
while. But we had these big lawns because it was very fashionable to have lawns. But
Mhm.
as we started understanding this whole cycle of fruits and vegetables and the lack of fresh organic fruits, for example, we just
True.
took a part of our lawn, took it out, and started growing fruits. And for
So
some reason,
there
we
you
ended
go.
up, yeah, and like we ended
There
up with
you go.
7 fruit trees, 5 of our own and 2 of the neighbors. So the apples from one side and cherries from the other side, 2 neighbors. Then we grew 5 peas, persimmon, peaches, pluots, uh, pomegranates, and all that. So it just happened that every fruit we grew was with a pea. But we had literally fruits for about 9 months in a year. And then we realized there was so much that was getting
That's
wasted.
yeah.
So then we started sharing with our neighbors unconditionally because there's no point even trying to barter because it's
Correct.
seasonal,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
And then people
It should
started
be.
sharing. Then our neighbors also started sharing. And it created
Yeah.
a shared economy. And then we realized that there isn't enough capacity to eat all that fruit in the neighborhood. So we started keeping it
True.
outside. And whoever wants comes and picks it up. So
So
it wasn't like
lovely,
we
lovely,
started it
lovely
with a,
hearing that from you.
sorry?
I'm. I said lovely getting to know about this.
Yeah, and it's funny
It's
because
wonderful.
it wasn't
If
like
you could do
our,
it,
yeah,
if you could do it, there are chances others can adopt it. Like
yeah. And this is in the heart of
try it
Silicon
out.
Valley. This is literally 1 mile away from the Apple headquarters. So it wasn't like we had huge space, but we had enough space to grow. And
True.
what's interesting also was that it wasn't even our idea because this idea is not a
Mhm.
new idea at all. So we
Mm.
just started doing it and we started sharing
Don't you
unconditionally.
remember our grandparents and all? They used to
Exactly,
keep on
exactly.
growing something or the other
Something or the
in our
other.
backyards. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's not new. We have to go back to our traditional methods,
yeah.
traditional ways of living life. Then, sure, you need technology. Sure, you need all of this luxury, lifestyle, comfort, everything. But won't it be comforting to have your own food, know how it is grown, know how you take care of it, and how it speaks back to you in return?
In
You
fact, you
see?
reminded me of something interesting. We had so many roses. So initially, we were giving roses as gifts. But then at some point, my wife realized that people wanted not just roses, but rose plants, cuttings.
Oh,
And
wow.
especially, what is it called? Kadi patta. What do you call it?
Curry leaves.
Curry leaves,
Curry leaves.
exactly. People just love curry leaves. Indians, we cannot survive
Yeah,
without
Indian
curry.
loves.
So
Yeah, we have it
we
in our upmas, in our pohas.
exactly, which is not that easy to grow in Northern California. But my mother-in-law has a green thumb, and she grew not one, but there are like 4 trees, 4 little trees of curry leaves, which during winter they become bare trees. All the leaves fall off for 3 months, and then it comes back. which doesn't happen in India because of the tropical weather. But in California, Mediterranean weather, temperature goes down to almost 0 degrees Celsius in winter. For 3 months,
Mm.
there are no leaves, and then it comes back. But initially, we were giving only the leaves to people. Towards then, we
Now
started
the
giving cuttings.
plants.
Yeah, and
Wow.
people tried, people
These are
experimented.
these are really small gestures of being
Yes.
filled. It is coming from, what do you call? You call it doubling down on love. It should
Yeah.
come from a space where you are not asking them, but realizing what they are
Yeah.
seeking.
And honestly,
That's the.
I wasn't as much a part of I was more the beneficiary.
Mm.
I'm still not into gardening, but I could see my mother-in-law, my wife getting into it in a big way, and they loved it. This was their, like, they were mothering these plants. They were taking care of them like their babies. The biggest,
Guardians of.
the biggest challenge for my wife was coming back to India, leaving her plants behind. She was in tears. She had 40 little
Mm.
plants in pots and these 5 or 6 fruit trees. So she was like, I hope the tenants take care of these plants.
Take
They're my
care of
babies.
them. Yeah.
So
I know what you're saying.
do you have any suggestions for people? Because we're not here just to give advice, but as somebody who has been
True.
working in this field for so long, do you have any ideas? Like what we did was just because my mother-in-law had the green thumb. It wasn't any scientific study. It was my mother-in-law's interest in gardening and growing things that led to almost a tradition. But what can people do? How can they keep this alive wherever they are?
Like I said, it has to first be in your consciousness. It has to first be a calling, a cautious mm, calling that you take seriously about, and you are vigilant of your acts and actions. And the sum and summary of it remains in you being highly, highly aware of what you're growing and what are the consequences of it to you, not just you, to people around you also, right? So if so we have this in back home. I come from a very small place in Odisha. I have my family there, my parents and my grandparents. That's our very old home. So we have a food forest, if
Oh,
you
wow.
are. So, and that food forest has almost everything from lemons to jackfruits to pomegranates to everything. And while it existed, there was also, we do have ponds and everything, but this is a way in which villagers still do live, you know. So we had two ponds, um, one in the front and one in our backyards. So I was not realizing what for we are having them, and of late then it dawned to me that it maintained the water levels of the area. So educating oneself on how the environment talks back to you, communicates with you in return, is so important.
Very
I cannot
true.
even tell you. It is
Yeah,
so important. We do underestimate villagers, the science with which they uh, survive and have survived. We don't realize why is there always a pond in a village, and these plants won't even need that much water. If you're thinking a garden might require a lot of attention, lot of care, nurturing. You have to look into it. But if you are just throwing seeds, just wildly curious enough to grow something out of it, as a community, as a whole, population, one has to take an approach which is more holistic, which is to say, like, uh, not just like these kind of things these villagers, like, they do, and they
yeah,
don't do it deliberately. They do it out of practice. They do it out of a way in which they have lived.
that's true. That's true.
We have to go back to our roots.
Yeah,
We have to go back to our roots. And there are plants like they realize that they don't have had malls, where they would get. It's only our creation to live a easy life, to live a comforting life.
to
It's
take
only our
shortcuts.
creation now. Of course, sure. So now, and to have uniform looking, everything perfect, all the lemons have to look the same, all the oranges and apples should look red and all. In fact, they say like if your vegetable has insects, it's fine, you should go for that, not the beautiful looking one, because if the insect is eating it and surviving, you will too.
Yeah,
It is
that means it's really nutritious. It is sweet and so on.
it is not killing the insect.
It's not killing the insect. That's true.
It
That's
is
true.
it's not
Yeah.
killing the insect. So there are chances that you will be alive. There are chances there, there are chances you won't die before death comes knocking at your door. So no, the thing that I wanted to say is going back to roots. I know it sounds very idealistic, but it can be done in our own ways, in our own scheme of things. We have to find a way. One has to collaborate and see how can we bring those science, those kind of setups into our urban living also. If we are capable of creating skyscrapers, we are also capable of creating a food forest. You know,
That's true. That's true.
we are just struck down those skyscrapers, man. Just struck down those malls. Instead, have these kind of plantation, which is self-sustaining, and also you won't have to buy. You just have to grow and eat, and whenever you choose, fresh.
Wow, wow, very interesting, very interesting. So, with this note, I would like to conclude. What's the best way if people have any questions for you? How can they get in touch with you? Do you have a website or a Facebook or a social media
Mm,
presence?
I am available on Facebook only. I am
Great.
not a social media person,
Right,
so
right.
that's all. And a
So,
mail ID works,
yeah, yeah.
so
So I
that's
think
fine.
Facebook would be good. I'll share that if that's okay with you. And
Panjas, come again.
I will share your Facebook ID if people are
Sure,
interested.
sure, sure.
And
Sure.
if people have more questions or if they want a follow-on session about what this whole business of how what is farming today and how can we participate, especially now that we've seen all these major changes to the disruptions to the even the the food value chain in the last few weeks. That's when for the first time people are seriously thinking about it.
Yes, yes. If you, like I said, if you are able to create all these skyscrapers and big monuments, you are capable of, very much capable of creating a food forest and to survive yourself. That's a
Yeah.
basic, that's a basic thing that you have to look for.
So we don't have to fly over kiwis from New Zealand and avocados from
I don't even
Mexico,
know.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
By the
yeah.
way, when I was in Mexico just a few months ago, fantastic
It won't like
avocados. Yeah.
we are just. I'm
No,
sorry. I
please go
just
ahead. Please go ahead. Yeah.
I said we are getting it, which is why we are having it. But I don't think it is like this vitamin rich, this avocados you have to
No,
eat
no,
with
no.
this. No, you will
Oh,
find similar nutrition rich food in your own food system, and one has to be aware of those things. Then just so tedious, like why are you depriving people of the other parts of the
of
place?
the world.
Then yeah,
And transporting them for
fancy,
millions, thousands
fancy,
of miles. Yeah.
having yeah, having fancy for an avocado is fine, but turning it into obsession is
It's
something
not.
I cannot understand.
Yeah.
It's something I really cannot
Yeah.
understand.
So out there, when I was in avocado land, in fact, both not only avocado but even guavas are native to Mexico.
Guava
That
land.
is,
Where are
yeah,
these lands? Where are
yeah,
these lands? I
yeah,
want to know.
yeah, yeah.
Where is
So guavas, they call it guayaba, is native to
when
Mexico,
where?
and guava, or sorry, avocados, which are called avocate.
Mm.
But there they fancy mangoes. So all the mangoes from India have
Imagine
gone there.
it's always the grass is greener the other side.
And
I
then
don't
people are
fancy
even told that
avocados.
something else is more nutritious than your Mexican diet, which is like, I
Imagine
started laughing. I said, everybody wants avocado and they want your.
you can, like in life also, you can never have enough of what you don't have.
That's true. That's true.
You can never have enough of what you don't have. It is a vicious
And we
cycle.
don't seem to care for what we have. We don't seem to understand the value of
Never,
what we have.
never,
So
unless we really are aware,
yeah,
very
there's a
highly
lot to
aware of.
learn from that. There's a lot to learn from just this, that what we
Yeah,
have.
small thing, but yeah, it
Yeah.
has.
Well, thanks again, and it's wonderful talking to you. It's been a while since you left MICA, and I keep traveling around, so I get to see people only once in a while. And I had no idea. I always thought you were in marketing because I was in marketing at MICA, but I
Yeah,
didn't realize your area of focus. So, so much to learn
yeah.
from that. And
Yeah.
to those who are listening, if you have any more questions, we'll make sure you get Dr. Glory's coordinates as well as mine. And do stay in touch. If you have any questions, you know where to find us. So stay in touch and
Thank you
stay
so
safe.
much.
And we'll be talking again soon.
Thank you so much, Anka. Thank you so much for having me. It's really encouraging to be a part of
Thank,
this
thank you very
lovely
much.
initiative.